Good evening. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance and please remain standing for the invocation by Reverend Canon Richard Reed of St. John's Episcopal Church. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You can sit if you have to. Let us pray. Heavenly Father, in your word you have given us a vision of that holy city to which the nations of the world bring their glory. Behold and visit, we pray, all the cities of this earth, and most especially this township of Gloucester and its leaders. Renew the ties of mutual regard which form our civic life. Keep us honest and able leaders. Enable us to eliminate poverty, prejudice, and oppression, that peace may prevail with righteousness and justice with order, and that men and women from different cultures and with differing talents may find with one another the fulfillment of their humanity in this community and in our time. Amen.
Thank you, Reverend Reed. This regular meeting of the Township Council is being held in accordance with the scheduled meetings of the Township Council, which schedule designate the time, date, and place of this meeting. Adequate public notice has been provided pursuant to the provisions of the Open Public Meetings Act. We are using a clear, electronic amplifying and recording device in order to obtain a clear and audible record, and we request all those wishing to speak be recognized and state your name directly into the microphone. The recording device will be solely utilized by the Township Clerk's Office at the preparation minutes and shall be the official record of the Township Council meetings. Madam Clerk, may I have the roll call, please?
Mr. Hutchison?
Present.
Mr. Owens?
Present.
Mrs. Stubbs? Present. Mrs. Winters? Here. Mr. Mignon?
Here.
Mrs. Trotto? Here. Mr. Mercado?
Present.
Mr. Carlemere?
Here.
Mr. Cardis?
Here.
Mr. Lechner?
Here.
Chief Harkins?
Here.
Mr. Chadwell?
Here. We'll now have our first public portion. This is for agenda items only. The public portion is a 15-minute period. Anyone addressing can address council may speak one time. Once all those that are wishing to address council have had their turns, they may address council a second time. Each speaker is limited to 3 minutes. Is there anyone for the public portion? Mr. Heimbaugh.
Good evening, Pete Heimbaugh, Morningstar Court.
Good evening.
My question is on ordinance 20-20-01. And I know will be a public hearing next meeting, but I just have some basic questions just to understand the ordinance. This is to amend a bond ordinance from the 2014 bond ordinance. That seems unusual to go back 6 years and amend a bond ordinance. Can explain that? And I see what we're doing, we're transferring from one project category to another project category. But how does that work 6 years after the fact?
Mr. Cardis?
These bonds are bonds associated with NJEIT loans, which are borrowed at a low interest rate. They stay intact until such time as we cooperate with NJEIT to return any funds that were not used. Those projects were ongoing projects. This is just moving money from one to another. The one that needed money was Redwood, I believe it is. Redwood Culvert. So, this is permissible. It's approved by NJEIT.
So these funds, we haven't spent, this money is unspent as of
This is money that is not spent at this.
But it was borrowed 6 years ago?
Yes, because the 14 ordinance came in, the projects, the actual costs of those projects came in under the estimates.
Why does that require you to borrow something 6 years before? Are we going to spend it soon?
You had to have the money intact in order to move forward with the projects.
6 years? We've been paying some kind of interest, low interest, I assume, for 6 years.
We do.
That doesn't sound, something done, it sounds like something could be done better than having borrowed money 6 years ago and pay interest and have it sit and do nothing, and now we're going to spend it 6 years later. Doesn't sound.
Well, once you borrow that money, that's a final borrow under the NJIT. So I was mistaken when I said it's going to be returned. It will not be returned. It's permanently borrowed. It becomes part of our permanent debt. They have different arrangements with regard to how the interest rates and what it's tied to. You don't pay interest on it until you permanently finance it.
So we borrowed this money 6 years ago, but have not paid interest for the last 6 years. Is it?
That I have to check on, Pete. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I know with the Redwood one, we have not. I believe on the other one, that has not been finalized either, even though it's 6 years removed.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Heimbach. Anyone else? Mr. Hague.
Good evening, Council. My name is David Haig, Highland Village, talking about 20-02. I see we want to exceed the municipal limits. Like I said 2 years ago, let's live within our means. As a member of Gloucester Township told me a while ago, the budget's in its early stages. It's like a cake. We're just making up the batter. Well, let's just put good ingredients in the batter. Keep out the bad ones. Keep the budget within order. No raises. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hague. Mr. Polidoro.
Good evening, Council. Ray Polidor from the historic village of Ariel.
Good evening.
On ordinance 2001, we have asked this before, and I have asked this numerous times. I find it very sad that money's been sitting that we borrow because we keep borrowing every year, and somebody's getting paid a
Well, I have
handsome.
to get clarification of that, Ray. I will get back to the next meeting to clarify that.
Okay. In any event, every other year, it seems that we borrow pretty substantial sums of money. Somebody's getting paid a handsome commission when we do. And yet we have money that is unspent from previous years. And I've asked you before, and I don't know, I honestly don't remember how we ended on that. How is it that being that the state allows us to do this, and, you know, New Jersey Gloucester Township does not want to be a shining example of what is all that's wrong with New Jersey. Just because they allow us to do things does not mean that we should. That's why that New Jersey is in the shape that it's in, because they allow municipalities to do what they do. Therefore, you have money that was unspent from several years ago. Tell me again why it is that we can't petition the state to reallocate that money for something that we're going to be doing now, save some fees and save some commission.
Again, there's two different types of borrowing. There's our own borrowing, the general obligation bonds, and then there's through the New Jersey Environmental Infrastructure Trust. That's what this program is about. So it's a little different. Now, if we're talking about our general obligation bonds, we do cancel those. We do resolutions at year end, and that money lapses over to fund balance. That's the way the state of New Jersey prefers that you handle it. They consider that to be then going against the debt service to offset the debt service in that particular year.
Oh, and again, in its simplest form and to the tax-paying public, if this is one kind of bond, this is another kind of bond, all we know is that we're borrowing money, we're paying interest on it, we're paying fees on it. There has to be some remedy that the state will allow us to take funds that are unused, whether it's $1 million or $250,000. and use it to some good. It's sitting, it sat for 6 years, it did nothing. And we have the ability to use that at a later time. I can't imagine the state of New Jersey. And listen, I know that the people in Trenton are brain damaged, but it doesn't mean that we have that. They make bad choices and we live by them.
The rules have not changed recently.
Again, rules and the ability to,
Years and years and years. We're doing exactly that. We're taking money that is not going to be needed for those projects that were requested, but because those prices came in under where the estimates were, and we're moving it over to a project where we don't have enough money.
but 6 years has passed. I mean, it's, there's some things I like in life, and I know I have to ask my wife, or she can say yes, no. I fully expect it, but at least I have to ask. And on ordinance 02, it just seems that every time there's an opportunity for you to bank the cap, you bank it. Will you ever say no to putting off a later increase or later spending or later caps in any kind where we can always put it back later and kick the can down the road? Will you ever say no and just let a year go by where we don't have to bank anything?
Yes.
So there are two different caps. There is the appropriation cap, which this involves, and there's the tax levy cap.
Mhm.
There is no bill, you can bank with the tax levy cap, but with the COLA ordinance, you have to pass the ordinance in order to be able to bank and in order to be able to go to the higher percentage of the appropriations. We're still bound by the tax levy cap. So there are things in the budget like gasoline, snowstorm, but of course we're not getting it right now with anything. But there are things in there that very well will go over the 2.5%. So being able to go to the 3.5% helps us with our budget preparation, and it enables us to bank cap for future years if we need it. We're still bound by the tax levy.
As far as the tax levy cap, and you're not bound by it because Gloucester Township has always found amazing ways to navigate around it with the other extenuating circumstances that we get to go around it. But it might be nice when that tax levy cap comes about that say no, just say no.
Well, the tax levy
Try it one
cap-
time in a row.
Tax levy cap is done by formula. Only things that are exempt, there's very little that's exempt in there anymore. Those are formulary, you enter them into the system, and then it tells you what your cap is.
And we know that when you bank it, we know that eventually it's going to come back to haunt us. But thank you. I know my time's up.
Thank you, Mr. Polidoro. Is there anyone else? Mr. Crew?
Good evening, Council. Paul Krug, Blackwood. Hope you all are well. Resolution 2002-055, agreement between the township and Area 51 Lawn Care. I think that goes back to October-November timeframe when they had originally submitted their proposal. I know they had some problems with that. That all got worked out, and now we're accepting their bid.
What happened was,
The bid was rejected.
yes, it was rejected twice. The first time there were no bidders. The second time, the successful bidder would have been well above our budget. So for that purpose, and Mr. Quality clarified, you're permitted to reject because it's outside your financing. Area 51's bid was deficient. They didn't have certain things that they needed. Since then they have, in fact, received those things. I think one was a public works certification from the state of New Jersey. The state law allows you, after going out for bid unsuccessfully 2 times, to negotiate a price and based on our qualifications and pricing, to negotiate the project. And that's basically what we did. The stipulation would be we cannot change the specifications. It has to be the same specs. So what we did now, under the negotiation part of what's allowed under the law, is exactly the same as those specifications that went out before that were rejected twice.
Okay, understood. And then I read that there was a caveat there that I think it went up by about 15, 20 grand, but that was due to they needed union labor
That is
in
correct.
order to meet that public works. Okay.
And that's that public works certification requires you to pay prevailing wages on everything.
Gotcha. Appreciate the explanation. Thank you.
Is there anyone else? See, Mr. Hague? Hold on. Before Mr. Hague speaks, is there anyone that'd like to speak for the first time? Mr. Hague will be our final speaker.
Thank you, council. On 057, David Haig, Highland Village.
Point, they have not applied for a tax abatement. It has not come before council. Do they have the right to apply for that? They absolutely do. But at this point,
Up in the air.
This is just a gaming license
Yes.
application.
oh, did you hear that? Yeah,
Gaming
that's-
license,
yeah.
but eventually taxes will be due somewhere.
Yes. Okay. And that will close the first public portion. Waive the reading, accept the minutes of reorganization January 3rd, 2020, and regular session January 13th, 2020, and January 27th, 2020. Madam Clerk, roll call.
Mr. Hutchison?
Yes.
Mr. Owens?
I have to abstain on January 3rd, 2020, yes, for January 13th and January 27th.
Mrs. Stubbs?
Yes for January 3rd, abstain January 13th, and yes for January 27th.
Mrs. Winters?
Yes.
Mr. Mignon?
Yes.
Mrs. Trotta?
Yes.
Mr. Mercado?
Yes, for the record, I jumped ahead. Can I entertain a motion to accept the reading of those minutes?
I'll make that motion.
Second. On the question, we did that. Thank you very much. Ordinance, first reading. I did that.
You did them all.
We did all three.
Okay, very good.
Ordinance, first reading. There will not be a public hearing. That will be held for the second reading at the end of the month. Ordinance 0-20-01 is ordinance amending bond ordinance 0-14-02, the Township of Gloucester in the County of Camden, New Jersey. A bond was adopted, a bond ordinance for township stormwater drainage system, and now we're moving these funds over to, there was funds that were not used, and now it's being moved over to our Redwood Street culvert project. I entertain the motion.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Thank you. On the question, roll call, please.
Mr. Hutchison?
Yes.
Mr. Owens?
Yes.
Mrs. Stubbs?
Yes.
Mrs. Winters? Mr. Mignon?
Yes.
Mrs. Trotta?
Yes.
Mr. Mercado?
Yes. Ordinance 0-20-02 is ordinance to exceed the municipal budget appropriation limits and to establish a cap bank for the calendar year 2020. This allows us to increase in the budget from 2.5 to 3.5 over the previous year's final appropriations. Mr. Cars, do you want to add anything to that?
No, I think we've already discussed it.
And that's on the appropriation side.
Correct.
I entertain a motion.
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. On the question, roll call, please.
Mr. Hutchison?
Yes.
Mr. Owens?
Yes.
Mrs. Stubbs?
Yes.
Mrs. Winters? Mr. Mignon?
Yes.
Mrs. Trotta?
Yes.
Mr. Mercado?
Yes. Next, we have our items on the consent agenda. Any council member would like to have any agenda item removed, please speak up. Hearing none, I entertain a motion to accept the consent agenda as presented.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Hutchison. Thank you, Mr. Owens. On the question, roll call, please.
Mr. Hutchison?
Yes.
Mr. Owens?
Yes.
Mrs. Stubbs?
Yes.
Mrs. Winters? Mr. Mignon?
Yes.
Mrs. Trotta?
Yes.
Mr. Mercado?
Yes. We did not receive any GT eGov access emails. Now open up the second public portion. Second public portion shall be for any item that the public chooses to address Township Council. You may speak one time. Once all those wishing to speak have had their turns, you may address the council second time. It's limited to 5 minutes per speaker, and the total time is for 30 minutes. Is there anyone like to speak during the public portion? Mr. Hay.
Council, thank you. David Haig, Highland Village. Just a question. It's a lot of chatter on social media. Is the municipality issuing trash cans?
I saw that chatter over the weekend. Someone put out that we're going to provide trash cans to all our residents. I would think that Mr. Cars, our VA, would be aware of that.
No. The contract with Waste Management ends this year, so we will be going out for bid, and I believe we'll be joining with Cherry Hill and Pine Hill, and I believe, I'm not sure if Merchantville's in there too, but it will be a cooperative purchasing agreement, so we get the best.
Well, it's just to pick up trash cans from resident provided trash
And I
cans.
will tell you, when they bid it out, because Steve Masilli from Cherry Hill is very thorough, he's the one that handles the that he does put in there for the automated, but that's an option. You don't have to select that. Because if we did that, we'd have to buy the cans.
Well, the current trash trucks do have the automated arms on them. If you buy the can, that costs like $45 or $50.
But we don't have trash trucks right now, and we don't have cans, and that's $2 million.
I was just curious. It was on chatter.
So I know you go on there, so you can tell your friends. If
Thank
you
you.
have a watchdog or a sweet choice or guardians out there, please let your followers know.
No, it's in Gloucester Township talk.
All right,
Yeah,
okay.
I'll just put on there that council says no. Have a nice day.
Thank you, Mr. Hague. Appreciate it.
Another question?
No, I didn't see a question. Okay. Is there anyone else? Mr. Krug?
Good evening again, council. Paul Krug. Just for the record, I sent my questions for this evening ahead of time via email, trying to be open and transparent and move our continued dialogue about downtown Blackwood forward. Each of these questions is in regard to the implementation tools that we can use in order to meet the objectives of the Blackwood West redevelopment plan, in addition to my strategic goals that I also sent via email, and what will inevitably be the recommendation of the new study by T&M Associates, which is parking and the redevelopment of certain buildings that blight the landscape. So first question is this council willing to designate the Blackwood West redevelopment area as a condemnation zone? Yes or no answer, please. If no, why not?
What exactly is a condemnation zone?
It's eminent domain, Mr. Hutchinson.
So, Mr. Krug, are you suggesting that we utilize eminent domain in that area?
I think it's a potential implementation tool for properties like 5 and 7 South Black Horse Pike that have remained a blight to the community for over 20 years.
So the answer is yes, you want us to use eminent domain.
Whether we use it to motivate the individuals, the property owners, to get on board with the plan, or we actually follow through with it, those are two different things. But having it as a tool at our disposal, I think could work well.
Yes or no? You asked us for a yes or no. I'm asking you for a yes or no. Would you use eminent domain?
Well, typically a question isn't answered with a question. So respectfully, I'd like you to answer my
You
question.
just gave us the question yesterday. Okay? I'm just getting it tonight. So I'm asking you, would you use eminent domain?
Sir, honestly, I can't, respectfully, I can't help that you didn't get it. I sent it beforehand to be open and transparent.
I'm going to
with this.
answer no, and that's just me. But as a council, we can't have conversations amongst each other without the public being present.
Sorry about that.
And we don't have time to have that conversation at this point. This is a conversation that takes place at a workshop.
Sure.
But your first
And I
question.
attended the last
Okay,
workshop.
but I didn't have that on the agenda. So no, I'm not interested
No.
in eminent domain and taking someone's property. There has been recent court ruling with the appellate division, New Jersey Superior Court, Glassboro versus Grossman. I looked that up today because I read your email. And are you okay?
Yeah, fine.
Okay. Where
Respectfully, may I ask for the time to be paused?
No, we're gonna keep going. There are, unless you want me, I'll just give you a yes or no answer.
Please.
No, on condemnation.
So
On
let the
second-
record show
on
the
the second
council's
one.
not willing to implement a condemnation zone to
On the-
meet the goals of the Blackwood West redevelopment area. Question number 2, is council willing to fund the purchase of 116 South Black Horse Pike and 120 East Church Street, combined list price $184,000 for parking to support downtown businesses? Yes or no? If no, why not?
I'll answer the question myself, and if anyone wants to add to it. No at this time, but I do support parking in downtown. But you're asking us to take a bond, so to purchase properties, to flatten them out and have parking there for downtown Blackwood. That's what you're asking us to do.
Yes, it was one of the objectives of the Blackwood West redevelopment plan, which council is not willing to
No,
put
I
forth
said
implementation
myself.
tools to support. Question number 3, is council willing to open a township-backed revolving credit line to support small business startups coming to downtown Blackwood? Yes or no? If no, why not?
Are you, Paul?
Certainly.
So why can you answer that question, but you wouldn't answer the eminent domain question?
Because it's a question to you.
No, I'm asking you that question. Why wouldn't you answer that question on eminent domain, but you are willing to answer this question?
With the constructs of eminent domain, which is very long notification process and working with the property owner and able to get it flipped. And if they refuse, which based on firsthand conversations, they have been very reluctant to work with us to bring back Blackwood. I think that at least at a minimum, the tool is important to have.
So let the record reflect that Paul Krug wants to use eminent domain in Gloucester Township. Is that a fair statement? Because that's what you're doing to us. You're asking yes or no questions when there's a lot more that goes into an answer.
And you've had 15 years to think of that answer. I'm sorry. The facts are the facts. 15 years is 15 years. It's half of my life.
You tend to oversimplify quite a bit.
No, I'm just trying to work together to simplify the implementation tools we have at our disposal to get things done towards this plan. It's not me versus you. It's us together.
I don't support taking someone's property. I don't support it. Okay? If they don't want to give up their property, then that's their right not to give it up. And
So do
I
you
don't-
support
I
the
think
parking?
it's un- I
Do you support the revolving credit line for small
I'm
businesses?
talking about eminent domain. I think it's.
You want to go back to that because that's a hot button issue, but I provided 3 separate
it's-
opportunities for us to get things done.
I think it's-
I'm just asking which ones are open to talk about, so at the next workshop, I
think
can
it's
bring it up.
un-American. I do think it's un-American to take people's property. I won't support eminent domain.
That's fine, but the courts have disagreed, and that's why it's a tool that townships can use.
Okay, well, we're different. I won't do it.
Fair enough?
Thank you, Mr. Krug, for your time.
So,
Mr. Carter just wanted to add something.
so 116 South Black Horse Pike, there is a good chance we may be purchasing that. We have an appraisal already. There needs to be an environmental assessment on the property, which we would seek grant money to do that. The property owner is reluctant to let anybody on the property to do an environmental assessment. I think he's concerned that he's going to be saddled with a problem if they do discover anything out there. So we are in talks now about an agreement to purchase. So there is a possibility that that's going to come to fruition. If 120 South Church Street, I think that was the other one listed, East Church Street is the drive-through bank.
Correct.
That owner does not wish to sell. So he backed off of the offer.
Thank you
Thank
for
you,
the
Mr.
information. I appreciate that.
Anyone else? Mr. Heimbaugh?
Behind Morningstar Court. Just curious, that bank property that we talked driving, that was originally going to be used for parking lot. I guess that deal
Yes.
fell through. Okay. That the seller didn't decide not to sell, I suppose. Okay. And I, for the record, don't want the township to eminent domain on personal property, for the record. I'll vote, I'll say no of that. Yep, you can reflect that in the record. We're getting near budget season, so I have a budget-related question, kind of in advance of the budget. Every year in the budget, there's a fairly large budget item that there's appropriation made for reserve for uncollected taxes. Could you just kind of explain, and it's a big number, it's like $800,000 plus typically in a year.
Okay,
If you could-
so a while back, 1997, the township agreed to do an accelerated tax sale, meaning that most municipalities at that time, when that legislation was made available, had their tax sale after the close of their fiscal year. At the time, ours was June 30th. It's now December 31st. So what the Reserve for Uncollected Taxes means is that we are responsible for collecting the entire tax, including the county, the schools, the fire district, and we must pay them 100% of what we collect, of the levy.
Yep.
100% of the levy.
Whatever you levy in, you have to cut a check to the school for 100% of that.
Even
Yep.
if we come up short,
Yep.
we only collect 95%.
Yep.
That would mean in today's terms that we would have a line item in there of probably close to $5 or $6 million because of the total amount of the levy that goes to all the other entities. So when you see it in there at 800,000, that means that we've collected about 99.98 or 99.8% of the taxes out there. Because with the accelerated tax sale, Merry Christmas, unfortunately, with the accelerated tax sale, and once you do it, you have to continuously do it. You can't go away from it. You are going to collect everything except for the properties that people aren't interested in because of maybe environmental concern or some other concern. So our collection ratio is above 99%.
Yeah, I think 99.52, I think is how you calculate the.
Right.
If I saw it right. But also though, on the budget, related to that, it seems related to me, on these same budget documents, there are lines for what you budgeted for tax collection revenue, property tax revenue. This is township only on the budget. But you budgeted for township property tax revenue. Then there's an actual cash realized column on the budget. And for each year in the last 5 years, that number, the actual cash collected number for property tax has been higher. Each of the last 5 years, I only went back 5 years. Each of the last 5 years, the actual cash receipts realized for property tax revenue has been higher than the budgeted amount.
And there's a number of reasons why that might be. Chuck's here. It could be the added or omitted assessments. So you have things that come along after that are taxed. And so rollback taxes, correct? We could have rollback taxes. So yeah, that could very well happen.
But does that number being higher, the cash realized,
Yes.
does
That's
that
because you
does
take
that
the-
indicate that you don't have a uncollected tax, a need for a,
No, it has
no?
nothing to do with
Okay.
it. It just would be money that would be realized in that year and would lapse the fund balance at year end, correct, Chuck?
Okay. So thank you for that. A separate question. The golf course property on Sicklerville Road, does community development or council or anyone know there's anything in the works for the use of that property coming up?
Mr. Lackner?
I have no information.
That's still privately owned property.
I'd have to check the
Yeah,
tax roll.
yeah.
I believe it's AP Construction. What is it? That purchased it. Purchasing, yeah, that's it.
Okay. Another kind of general question. What are some of the responsibilities of the Gloucester Township Housing Authority? I know they meet and they kind of manage, their board sort of manages that senior campus, but beyond that, what are their responsibilities? Their duties? I've read their mission statement, but that's not really a list of duties.
They also participate in the fair share housing plan that the township has. They are currently searching market to affordable element of our fair share plan. They're getting into other things that deal with the affordable housing, which is, by ordinance, they, in a sense, were given that authorization from the township council to participate in the fair share housing element.
Can you explain for those who are unaware of the fair share housing plan?
Fair share housing plan is the Mount Laurel decisions and all those decisions have developed over the year. Each community has an obligation to meet a fair share plan. Right now, the courts are taking over because the Council on Affordable Housing has been dissolved by prior state administration. Right now, it's being administered through the courts. All towns were obligated to participate in it. If you didn't participate in the fair share housing element plan through the courts, then you were opened up to a builder's remedy to come in and force low-income housing in certain areas or of their choice. You would open yourself up to litigation. Gloucester Township has always participated and can attest to this from the first stage, second stage, third stage, and we've been very actively participating with the courts when we were filed for our declaratory judgment of participation. We had a fair share settlement plan. We're now amending it, and we have a court hearing coming up. It's been extended to, I believe, May.
Court hearing for an amended
Yeah,
settlement
we're amending our fair share plan.
based on what's happened over,
areas.
it's amended based on what actually has happened
That's correct.
over time.
That's correct. There's been some changes in our direction, so we're introducing an amended plan for the township.
Okay.
Time's up, Mr.
Thank you.
Heinball. Is there anyone else? Mr. Polidoro?
Good evening again, Council. Ray Polidor from Ariel. I want to take this time to welcome the scouts to our meeting and indicate from this side of the microphone that even though it doesn't sound like we're trying to get things done, we may argue with them, but that is our responsibility as citizens to make sure that they understand how we feel. It's all done in its best effectiveness. I know that right about now we're working on the budget for this year, and I don't know how far along that is, but would you say that you have any projections as to what the bottom line would be where taxpayers are concerned that there would not be a tax increase this year?
No, it wouldn't, because the AFS statement, which is crucial to the budget process.
That's the annual financial statement.
Financial
Thank you.
statement, unaudited, which will then give us all of our revenue figures. That's typically due on February 10th. It's been extended by the state of New Jersey to March 2nd. So that is still being worked on.
Okay. Would you say in a great general overall, because you're good with numbers, I'm not as good with numbers, given the fact that we had some canceled capital projects from many, many years ago and an increase in revenue, substantial increase in revenue from premium outlet malls that as the abatement winds down, that we've had to find enough years that for the next 3 years, we should not see a tax increase?
No, I would not say that. I'm not going to say that. I can't predict what it's going to look like.
Okay.
The key thing is what the surplus balance is going to be.
And again, to reemphasize, some of the bond money could never be used in general fund to offset taxes. Is that correct?
Only if it's canceled at year end and lapses to surplus. You cannot use the NJEIT though for that purpose.
Many times folks come up here and ask how we can reduce taxes. And there's a select few that like to look at folks and ask them, what would you do? And always throw the grandmom off the cliff remedy is what usually comes up first. In its simplest form. And I don't know because I haven't seen it in years. But some folks will go to the other side of the building and appear in court for an infraction of the law. I know that we've got a new justice system that I won't get into that. Do we still in Gloucester Township hand out as part of a punishment and rectification of people's wrongdoings community service?
I am not aware. Mr. Carlin,
can't answer.
Chief Harkins?
I can't say for sure. I know it's still a possible judgment by the judge. I can't say for sure how often that happens. It does occur though.
But I think it's administered at the county level.
It's often administrated at the county level. We can process requests. I know they've done work at some of the local fire companies and things like that for minor offenses. But I could certainly find out for you. And
I would be curious if there's other municipalities that do that on their own.
I'll find out.
I like where you're going with that, Ray.
Okay, because I mean, Public Works, I know is spread thin. There's a lot of area to cover and many things that need to get done, trash cans that are overrunning. And we certainly know that Public Works can't be everywhere. But the possibility is that we could do that and maybe bring a trend back. Years ago that I remember Mayor Love had some other folks here in town that did a very good and effective job here and were serving our community. And it saved us a great deal of money. And I think Mayor Love at the time was innovative and it worked real well. So the possibility is that we could help out Public Works, clean up our town and save some money. And again, welcome to the Scouts. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Good night.
Have a good evening. Anyone else? Ms. Coyne?
Good evening.
Good evening.
Denise Coyne, Shoes Landing. I believe I read that Gloucester Township does have one redevelopment area that includes a condemnation area. College Drive comes to mind. Is that
What was
true?
that?
College Drive comes to mind.
As a condemnation area?
I think, yeah, I believe I read that somewhere.
Where do you recall where you read it?
I read a lot of files on redevelopment areas recently, and I believe I read that one did have a condemnation area. I'm not sure if it was College Drive or not.
Mr. Lackner, can you look into that for us, please?
Yes, I can.
Thank you.
So you're not aware of which one?
No.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Mr. Heimball. Oh, before Mr. Heimball speaks, is there anyone else that'd like to speak? Mr. Heimball will be our last speaker.
Peter Heinbaum, Morningstar Court. Continuing on with my questions of the Gloucester Township Housing Authority, we never really did. I never got more answers on that. You said they're involved in the affordable housing program, or how is it they're involved? Do they? I just really don't understand what the housing authority does.
Well, the Housing Authority basically is running the senior campus at that complex. And it's been in that functioning before it was built, and they were instrumental in having that unit built, that 75-unit senior campus one. A few years back, the township passed an ordinance directing, when we got involved in our fair share plan, partnering with the Housing Authority and having the Housing Authority identify the market to affordable program, which is a very difficult program to manage as far as meeting your fair share obligation. And that was one of their functions.
Was that the abandoned house, that state law that was passed a few years ago, where the township could rehab abandoned
And then you have to go
homes?
through identifying the abandoned properties and market value, and you have to have someone skilled in rehabbing them. They hire the contractor. That's a very difficult program, really, throughout the state, especially in this area, to really get off the ground.
And everyone that we would rehab and bring to market on those counts as an affordable housing unit? Is that how that works?
And years ago, when we had rent stabilization, that was all administered through the Housing Authority. Then that eventually had a vacancy decontrol phase out, and that's what happened to rent stabilization. So their main function, that I would say now, is the management of the senior housing campus, Senior Campus 1, and the COA program, Fair Share Plan with the township.
Okay, thank you. Doesn't the Housing Authority contract to a management firm to do the management of that senior campus?
There is a part-time executive director.
Okay, so
It's mandated to have an executive director.
but there's no firm, there's no professional management company that is contracted to manage the property, like as a property manager type of thing.
They have their own commissioners, in a sense. They have their own professional services or attorneys, and also maybe your question should be directed there.
There's a meeting tomorrow night, 6 p.m. at Senior Housing Complex.
Okay. As the council liaison to that, can you respond to any
Really everything that Mr. Carlmer said is, yeah, that a lot of their business is about just providing the oversight for senior housing for the complex there. And just making sure things are within budget, they're hiring contractors for certain things. That's basically what the meetings are. But yeah, come out tomorrow night.
Very good. All right, thank you.
Thank you. We'll close the second public portion. Polling directors?
Mr. Carlemere?
Nothing to report.
Mr. Curtis?
Nothing to report.
Mr. Lechner?
Nothing to report.
Chief Harkins?
Council, I just want to, in case you're not aware, Friday night, we became aware of a tragedy. An 18-year-old student from Highland High School was tragically killed in a motor vehicle crash in Hamilton Township, Atlantic County. The young woman's name is Tina Alessandro. I just wanted to make sure the council is aware of it. And, the high school has been providing support. We've been in touch with them. But just ask everyone to keep her family. I know that she has a 16-year-old brother. I believe the father and the mother of the child passed away previously also. So just keep that family in your thoughts and prayers. They're from the Summerdale area of Gloucester Township, Timber Birch.
Chief, the mother and the father of this particular child has passed already?
The father is a widow. He was raising her and I believe a 16-year-old. So, just something to keep in mind for families.
Mr. Chadwell?
Report, thanks.
Mr. Hutchison?
I'd like to acknowledge the younger people in the audience and the college students in the audience back there. You get to see government. Sometimes it's not all nice and warm and fuzzy, but that's the way it is. There's going to be a disagreement between people. Tonight we were talking about taking people's property, your house. And somebody posed a question. How do we feel about implementing an ordinance which would allow us to take the resident's home or property? That's an interesting issue. And you heard some of us say there's no way. So it does get a little hot contested here. But thank you very much for coming. Thank you for participating. Everybody have a good night.
Mr. Owens?
Thanks, everyone, for coming out tonight. Welcome to the scouts that are here. I hope you guys learned something, and you're welcome back all the time. My thoughts go out to Gene Alessandro's family as well. Thank you, Chief, for making us aware of that. These past couple of weeks, also, we've had several fire installation events. So congratulate all the new commissioners and all the row officers and all the firefighters and first responders who keep us safe every day. Other business, Census 2020 is coming out. The county is kind of overseeing the census with the U.S. Census Bureau. There are jobs for folks to be census takers, and just to give an idea of why it's important to make sure you are responding to those surveys for anyone within any household. The data that goes back to the U.S. Census Agency affects school lunch programs, Medicaid, community development grants, road and school construction, medical services, business locations, amongst many other things. So be on the lookout for some other information coming out about the census. The county's doing a great job of disseminating the information to all different towns. Really, really important that we have a good count here in Gloucester Township for that. Additionally, the 20th annual business breakfast will be on April 9th. All are welcome. You do have to register. That information can be on the website or on the GT Works flyer that comes out. And lastly, it's tax time. There's a lot of scams going around out there via email, text messages, voicemails. I know the chief and the department are obviously aware of it, but really the tax folks, IRS, they cannot reach out to you, ask you for money. things are done by official means. So make sure if you have family out there, friends out there that have these issues with the IRS or through conversations, make sure you talk to them. Tell them to give the police department a call or the IRS a call to make sure it's going through official channels. Other than that, Chief, thanks as always to men and women of the police department. And thanks for coming out.
Mrs. Stubbs? Wow.
Thank you. Thank you for coming out, everybody. I also would like to acknowledge our scouts. Love to see ladies in uniform. Love to see parents offering that support in uniform and out of uniform. Parental support is so important for the achievement of children in school, out of school. Just saying that really warms my heart. So I really appreciate the efforts that you put in to your children. And again, thank you everyone for coming out.
Mrs. Winters?
I too want to acknowledge the scouts. It's always nice to see different faces in the crowd, especially the youth of our town. It's always nice for them to be part of anything that's happening in the town. As you'll see, most of the council members have red on this evening. It is February, so it is Heart Month. It's also Go Red for Women Month. So just a little fact, the leading killer of women is heart disease and stroke, of which 80% is preventable. So women, take care of yourselves, listen to your bodies, and pay attention. Have a good day.
Mr. Mignon?
Thank you all for coming. Mr. Haig, I know you had mentioned about potentially trash cans. Lately, I've been seeing our mayor on TV talking about recycling. And for those of you who don't know, there's an app out there if you have a smartphone called Recycle Coach. And through Recycle Coach, it'll remind you when recycling will happen and then what objects you can put in your recycling can. It's another way to cut costs and make our town more effective. So Recycle Coach if you don't have it. Everybody have a good night. Be safe going home.
Mrs. Strata?
Thank you also to the scouts for coming out and hearing our meeting. And thank you to the township. Scott was showing me to remind me the picture, how our township always supports the different health initiatives. And our township did the Go Red for $5 donation. They were able to wear jeans. So a shout out to the township for always supporting us. Thank you. Have a good night.
Mr. Mercado?
I want to thank everyone for coming out this evening. I just want to piggyback on what Mr. Mignon said. The reason why there is an emphasis on recycling recently, I serve as a liaison to the Gloucester Township MUA. Our recycling at the facilities, at some instances, has been turned back because of the recycling that we're providing there is not complying with what they accept. What that does is that adds an additional cost to our township. So that's why there's a continued effort. Talk about the recycling yet? Go ahead, Mr.
Yeah,
Carter.
so let me just clarify.
That's why I leaned over to
Yeah,
Mr. Carter.
let me clarify. So what's happening right now is that they have what's called an 8% contamination level. And there was a lawsuit. I don't think there's a lawsuit ongoing right now, but there was a decision by a judge that left open how to calculate the amount of contamination. And the problem is with our trucks, they're compacted, and they go compacted into the back of the truck where there's a hopper. That hopper hinges open. So when we're over there, we're dumping the loads, and once you open that hopper, you compromise the safety of that vehicle to go on the open road. You cannot close it and push everything back in. It comes out with pressure. So they're dumping it, and there's some argument between the owners because what happened was Camden County put out a bid 3 years ago, and there's an option for 2 more years of renewal where we locked in, all the municipalities except one, I think was Voorhees, participated in this and locked in at $5 per ton. Well, if you know what's happening with China and the recycling market, right now it's costing a lot more than $5 to dispose of recyclables. So what I think was a bad business decision is putting the screws to us with regard to a heavy-handed saying that these are contaminated loads. So a lot of that is being argued right now. Thus far, they have not billed us anything additional over the $5 per ton, but that threat is always there. And we, quite frankly, once we dump that load's got to stay there and it has to be processed. It cannot change. What I don't understand is they've always had an assembly line, they've always had pickers, they've always, so if you, for example, what you should not do, if you take a 13-gallon a plastic trash bag and you throw your bottles and your cans in there and you tie it off and you toss it into the pink lid, that's a no-no. And they're counting all that is in that plastic bag as being contaminated. What they should be doing, in my opinion, was what they do anyway, which is break that bag open on the conveyor line and let those recyclables that are truly recyclables, not contaminated, go into the site. Then all you've got is a plastic bag that's contaminated. They don't want the plastic bags because apparently they jam up the processing equipment, and that's a problem for them.
And that's why you're seeing TV commercials.
Right.
Thank you.
There's the threat.
The threat. I want to send my condolences to the Alessandro family as well, and also to the Matteo family. George Matteo Sr., who's a longtime resident of Gloucester Township, a developer, businessman, entrepreneur, recently passed away. So we send our condolences to his family. Welcome the Scouts. Thank you for being here this evening. Also, just to piggyback on just one item that Mr. Owens had stated earlier, we recently finished the firefighters. We have 6 fire districts, and 5 of the 6 had installation dinners or events for their new officers to be sworn in for the new year. And we're invited to break bread with them and attend that swearing in. And we appreciate everything that the firefighters do for our community. At our next meeting on the 24th, we will be celebrating Black History Month, celebrating 10 individuals that have made contributions to our community. There'll be a program and some music there, and we will meet 10 outstanding individuals that contribute greatly to our community. And lastly, we have an election this Saturday, the fire district elections. They run from 2 to 9 o'clock p.m. In your district. That's September 15th, this Saturday. With that, I entertain a motion to adjourn. Is there a second? All those in favor? Have a great night, everyone.
Turn it off.
Oh, yeah. A bunch of books. Oh, yeah.
Oh, Tom.
Okay.
Tom.
That's yours.
All right, I'll see you later.
Oh, this is yours, right?
Yeah.
Yes, it is.